Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to share with you why it's important to learn how to forgive and eventually get ourselves to a point where we don't even need to forgive, where we don't hold resentments to begin with, and why releasing and letting go of resentment is important and valuable. So especially if you're on the spiritual path, this is incredibly relevant. I've even heard it said where you shouldn't even bother trying to meditate if you're not able to forgive yet, because you'll end up just sitting by yourself and resenting and anchoring and deepening in your resentments if you try to meditate before you're ready to forgive. So that's a nice little tidbit. That's from Swami Chinmayananda. And even without that, we can look at it. If you're not even on a spiritual path, you could see, just look at it and just be honest about what it brings to your life. Holding resentments and grievances and all of that kind of stuff, it just harbors inside, and it just kind of poisons you from the inside, no matter how justified. And that's probably one of the important aspects of it. Is it's not just because it's justifiable doesn't mean we need to hold on to any of it at all. So, and that can be a tough one for us to embrace because it is justifiable, a lot of the things. Sometimes things happen to us and it seems like we don't know why they happen to us. We don't feel like we deserved to be treated a certain way, or we don't feel like, what happened was merited in any way. We can get angry at people, we can get angry at life, we can get angry at God. I mean, I held a lot of anger towards God for a long time because of things that happened to me, and just because of the way I felt inside too. So this is a really valuable subject, and let's get into it today, and I'd love to hear your feedback on it as well as we move forward. And it can be a big one for a lot of people, so let's dance. So when it comes to forgiveness, again, it's important to be able to do when we're on the spiritual path. A lot of the spiritual journey is about lightening your load. It's not really necessarily about like gaining lots of knowledge and learning lots of things. That can be a fun part of it. And it can be a beneficial part of it when we learn like techniques on how to meditate. And even today, maybe there's a little bit of a technical aspect to today's talk. And how do we let go of things? How do we release forgiveness? Learning a little bit, but I consider there's like two types of knowledge. There's a type of knowledge that adds to your collection of knowledge, and then there's another type of knowledge that helps you actually release and let go of things. So it actually lightens your load. And that's one of the qualities of spiritual knowledge, is it leads us to a place where we actually get lighter instead of heavier. Because even sometimes philosophies and stuff like that, as pleasant as they can be, as intricate or technical or interesting as they might be, they might just add weight to our human journey. So it's it's valuable to look at these things this way. When it comes to forgiveness, how do we forgive for things that have happened to us that are justifiable? So one of the ways of doing that is a really basic way of doing it, and that is acknowledging that everybody's been through shit, that everybody goes through stuff, and that people who act in a way that's harmful have been harmed in their life, and they're acting from that place. They're acting from a place where they're holding on to something, and they act through that thing that they're holding on to that hurts them, and then cause more hurt in the world. It's another reason why we forgive, is because what we hold inside determines greatly our actions. It determines our thoughts and our experiences, and it in a lot of ways governs our acting as well. So that's another reason why forgiveness is healthy. Again, whether spiritual or not, it's a healthy thing to do, because it at least takes one part out of our potential behavioral tendencies that can influence them in a negative way. So that's one thing, to acknowledge that if somebody did something hurtful to you, it's coming from a place of hurt for them, and to try and have some compassion for them in that way. another way of looking at it is that, and now we're getting a little deeper now into some esoterics, but to acknowledge this idea we hear a lot about in the spiritual community of oneness, that all is one. If we really sit with that and contemplate and meditate on oneness, and what are we saying when we say all is one? One of the ways of looking at that is the subjective aspect of existence, or the subjective quality of existence, is where the unity is. And that's one kind of phase of that. So phase one, acknowledging that the self inside everyone, the witnessing consciousness inside of everyone and in everything ultimately too, but for now, we'll just focus on conscious beings, is one. In other words, another way of saying this is there's only one self in existence. And it's the same, and it's identical in each being. One of the ways we can prove this is in Jnana Yoga, particularly, Jnana, spelled Jnana, yoga is self-inquiry. So we inquire into who we are. And one of the ways we do that is by acknowledging that anything that I can see cannot be what I am, because I'm seeing it. So I'm a perceiver. That's one thing that's a fact. I'm perceiving existence, right? Even in just a raw sense, not in any particular way of like analyzing or judging what things are, or what the quality of things are, or whatever it is, or adding any kind of like familiar sense to like, oh, I know what that is, or whatever. Just the raw function or experience of perceiving itself is something that is a fact about my existence and everyone. That's the fact of everyone's existence, is that I exist and I'm perceiving the world, the outer world that's out there, and the inner world that's inside myself. That's my thoughts, my emotions, and physical sensations, and all that stuff's like exclusive to my perceiving, is my own body and mind. But then there's the world out there too. So for everybody, it's the same. The pure perceiver or the pure witness is exactly the same. And some of the practices of meditation and yoga bring us to that place and actually remove the false identifications with the other stuff, like the ego and the brain functions and the body and emotions and all of that stuff. Anything that we can see, it's not something that we are. We can't be. So in doing that, we can experience like kind of the essence of the true self. And for everybody, it's the same kind of experience. It's peaceful sometimes, or it's blissful. One of the ways I've heard this said is that there's no way to describe the self, but you can describe the fragrance of the self. And that is these experiences, the sensation of blissfulness. You don't really know why. It's not like nothing has to happen for there to be a happy or a peaceful space within you when you're anchored and rooted in your true identity. It's just simply there. It's one with what it is. So this is one way we can look at it too. And how does that help us with forgiveness and getting over resentment, is acknowledging that the self is one within all of us. Therefore, we naturally sort of move to care for and have compassion for everyone in existence, because it's only one being. This naturally starts to happen as I anchor in my experience of life from that place. So it's not like something you have to like try to do. You naturally have more compassion towards others when you live from that place. That takes practice. That takes like, deep contemplation on who you are, even with guidance and stuff like that. And then not only that, but then finding and actually getting a taste of an experience of yourself and its purity. And then from there you move through, like, there's that habit and tendency to identify with the ego and to identify with the body as we move through life, to identify with emotions, all that kind of stuff, our history, our life stories, and our heredity, and our family, and our roles in society. We identify with all these things that are not really ourself. It's like air identifying with a saxophone. You know what I mean? The wind moves through the saxophone to bring it to life and make it play, you know, by the player. But it's a similar way with the spirit, the self, as it exists in the human body. It's like it's the life force, it's the wind, it's the air that brings the human vessel to life, which is kind of just an inert biology. That's a whole thing in itself too. But when it comes to forgiveness, oneness, coming from that place, it ends up kind of being a natural effect of living from there. And that's why when I said earlier in the video, in the beginning, getting even beyond the need to forgive. So we need to forgive, or it's good to forgive, while we still have the capacity to hold resentment and stuff like that. And then living from the true self is a space that we don't even need to bother with that anymore, because it just doesn't happen. Things don't stick. You don't hold on to resentments. So these are kind of like a few stages. Another way of approaching this is in the same mood of accepting that all is one, that there's a oneness to existence, that is sort of like there's this thread woven through existence behind sort of the veil of the material reality as we experience with our senses. So beyond our experience of the senses, there's this aspect or quality of life that is unified, that is non-dual, that is one. A way of looking at that is, the world is my mirror. The world is a reflection of myself, or it's a reflection of what I hold, right? Myself is the divine aspect. My soul is my spirit, that subjective experience, that perceiver or witness aspect of my experiencing in its pure sense. That's my spirit, that's my essence, that's my truth. Everything else is sort of the play of ideas and concepts, similar to like in a dream, where you have ideas, you have principles, you have beliefs, you have fears, you have all this stuff that's stuck inside of you. When you dream, your mind has this like unabridged ability to create and play out all of that stuff in there. We're kind of saying that the world is very similar to that, where the world that we experience, everything that happens to us, happens for us to reveal the truth about what we're holding. In other words, another way of looking at it too is that everything that I store inside attracts into my life certain life experiences of certain essence, certain frequencies, certain qualities, you know? So this is one of the ways that we can approach this as well, is there's nobody to hold resentment towards if I'm attracting everything into my life. And this takes a radical acceptance. Again, even it might even seem like, well, what about that thing that happened to me when I was young and I didn't do anything to deserve that? How would I attract that? We have to look really deep, and we have to be really open and really honest to accepting that this is kind of the law of the universe. It's kind of the law of experience. Nothing happens chaotically and randomly. Everything happens in sort of this like conjunctive, like attraction and repulsion based on frequency. And so if I was to say, why did things happen the way that they did towards me, it's just because I was like, I have this frequency arrangement inside of me based on my beliefs that are kind of stored inside, based on memory imprints that are kind of stuck onto me. That's what sort of creates the nature of my reality that I experience. So there's nobody to be resentful towards. Everything happened perfectly, actually, in perfect alignment with what I'm carrying around. And then therefore that also brings me to a place of like releasing resentment is really the best way to free myself from those types of experiences happening again. So you could see the value in this. And this is what we could say is we're starting to see from truth when we start to see things in this way. And this isn't foreign from modern science either. This is something that quantum mechanics actually directly says. That's something you can look into if you're interested, but it's pretty cool to see that happening, that how aligned the ancient spiritual teachings are, which were scientific. We consider them spiritual, but it doesn't seem like they differentiated between spirituality and science. It was all just one knowing of existence in life. So we have this separation of spirituality and science in our culture now, but that doesn't mean the ancients did. I don't think they did. So, but it's nice that we're it's kind of naturally happening in our world too, where they're kind of coming together. Undeniably, we have to look at that way. We have to be honest about that. If we're going to get to greater truth, if science wants to get to the greatest truth, it's inevitably going to have to acknowledge that, look at these similarities of what we're discovering and what spirituality has been talking about for a long time, right? So how do we do this? How do we, if it feels like hard to do, it's something that we have to meet, moment to moment, when we have stuff come up, when we have resentments come up, when we have anger come up, or emotions come up, or trauma, and all of that come up. Then we have to sit with it. We have to sit with it. We have to let it be there, not hold any resistance towards what arises, really go deep into it, and then instill these sort of philosophies or attitudes of oneness and unity, and even inquire is like really one of the greatest ways. The Jnana Yoga practices of self-inquiry is, I think, one of the most valuable and relevant things in our world today, is to inquire into myself, into my nature. Where am I coming from? Is this ego right now? Am I identified with ego right now? Or am I living from my true place? And we could start to view things in this grand way. And so when something arises for us, especially if it's a resentment or something, we can say, okay, what is this showing me about myself? And just open to that. The mind doesn't need to take it and like sift through memories and like dig up something and say, oh, it's this, bing. It's more of like getting connected with an inner intuitive wisdom inside that's not based on memory. It's going to use memory to reveal patterns in your life. You'll watch that happen. But as stuff arises, what is this showing me about myself that I'm ready and that I need to release? So it's a bit of a practice here. Something arises of a resentment, just in this particular case, but you can really do this with anything that arises, any kind of emotion. What is this showing me about myself? If it's some kind of unpleasant emotional feeling, it's coming from some kind of attachment that we have. It's coming from something that we're holding on to that we don't need. We don't need to suffer. It's not an inevitable part of life. We may experience pains, but we don't need to hold on to things that bubble up and can have us continue to suffer. We don't need to do that. And the spiritual journey is largely, in part, bringing us to a place where that doesn't happen anymore. That we don't suffer the things of the past, and that we don't do things and live in a way that creates more suffering for us presently and in the future. And that we don't cause suffering in others as well. This can be ways that we define the spiritual journey, is getting to that place, or getting to a place like that. That place is the self within, by the way, is living by that purely. It is that intuitive knowledge. It is the higher self. It's inside of you. When you call out to your higher self, you're calling to something that's inside. All right. So again, just to reiterate, this a little bit of a practice that we have. Whatever arises. Today we're talking about resentments, but it's anything. Whatever arises and bubbles up, allow it. Don't resist it. Don't add any kind of negative thing to it because you don't want it to be there, because it's unpleasant, because it's uncomfortable. Let it be there and look right at it. Look right at it. Allow it to be there without judging it. And say, what is this trying to show me about what I'm holding on to inside that I'm ready to release? I'm ready to release it. And your pure witnessing of it sets it free in itself. And the pitfall is the narratives that come along with the feelings that we have. If you take anything from anything that I share, it's this. Don't believe in the narratives that are playing out in your head. Something Dr. David Hawkins says is all of the narratives that we have, all of the thoughts that we have about these things, especially you can detect when they're dualistic, when they're separated, when they're resentful and all that. All of them are vain and untrue. And this is something that I was practicing even recently with some stuff that I was going through that came up in my life. And I instantly dropped into this practice that I'm sharing with you today. And it was such a profound awakening. You ever have an epiphany? You ever experience an epiphanal moment where you just have a realization and it hits you? There's that like euphoria. There's that euphoric feeling that you get when you have an epiphanal moment, when you just like realize something that's, is true. There's a bliss. That's what bliss feels like. That's the experience of truth. The experience of truth is like that. The experience of living as your true self is like that all the time. That epiphanal moment is just a glimpse at what it's like to live in truth. And so in this moment, as we do this practice, something bubbles up, arises. We allow it to be there. We sit with it. What is this showing me about myself? What is this showing me about what I'm holding on to that's false, that's an illusion that I'm ready to release? And then sit there with it and then just watch it happen. Revelation comes from that place. And again, don't get tied up in the narratives. The mind is going to try and come in. Know that that's the ego. The narratives about separation, about why we should justify holding on to the resentments, that's all ego stuff. It's all illusion. It's all false. We don't need to believe in any of the stories that the mind plays out in this way. All right, so that's something that we can hold on to and say, okay, there's a narrative, there's a story going. This is what I just did it was last night. I just did this last night. And it worked so profoundly beautiful. And so quickly, it returned me to a place of joy when something stressful was coming up. So drop right in. I don't need any of the stories. Totally let go of the stories. And then the revelation is available. All right? I hope this helps, friends. I hope this blesses your life. It has blessed my life profoundly. I can't even tell you. This is a huge thing. It's a big, beautiful thing. Enjoy. Any questions, please leave questions or comments. If you got something from this video, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications button so you can get notifications when new videos come out. Let's stay connected. Let's steady on the path together towards a greater world for all of humanity and beyond. Many blessings, friends. Namaste.